Peace, love, liberty, radio.
And the walls come crashing down as the war at home reaches your town. You have no choice, it's safe and clean. We all submit to the war machine.
To tip or not to tip, that has been the subject of many libertarian discussions. And when I say many, I mean many, a lot. And it's something, if you've ever watched or listened to Black Sheep Rising, it's something that you know that me and Conan differ on, where I believe that, if you go out to a restaurant and it's one of these places where people bring the food to you, you should most definitely tip them. And there are other sort of service industries where it's appropriate and acceptable and somewhat expected that you tip. If you go to a car wash and people are doing labor on your car, and, there's a difference between the car wash where you go and, you spray it down yourself. Obviously, you don't go find a worker and then hand them money and be, thank you for letting me wash my car here. But if you're at a car wash where you basically hand your car over to someone and they drive the car around and then it gets washed by people or a machine, and then there's people that are doing things like cleaning out your cup holders and, cleaning all the gunk off of your rims on your tires. It's acceptable and expected to tip in that circumstance. And I actually, but before I get on to what I wanted to talk about, I did not know that such things existed until I worked for one in Texas. And apparently there's a lot of these car wash places in Texas where you basically hand your car over to the company. They drive it and guy puts it in the tunnel and it goes through the tunnel and people do stuff and they clean all your windows and they clean out the cup holder and they make it new and shiny. And yes, you should most definitely tip those people. I actually wound up making more in tips working for this car wash than I did in my paycheck. So what I want to talk about is tipping. And apparently there's a restaurant in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, that the claim is they tripled their profits in 2 months by establishing a policy of no tipping in the restaurant. The story here comes from Fortune magazine. It's actually fortune.com where I'm getting the story. And the article begins, the business model has been so successful, according to Bobby Fry, the owner and founder of Bar Marco, that he is expanding the concept to a sister restaurant, the Livermore. And yes, you should be able to tell from the names Bar Marco and the Livermore that we're not talking about casual dining places here. So we're not talking about something that is competing with Ruby Tuesdays or Olive Garden or Outback Steakhouse. We're talking about upscale establishments here. The article continues by actually calling it an upscale eatery and talks about this article, by the way, was written in June. So when it says last Tuesday, it's talking, basically a Tuesday in June. The upscale Pittsburgh eatery Bar Marco closed its doors for a different kind of workday. In carpools to Target and on Craigslist runs, the restaurant's team of 26 staffers were undertaking a redesign of its employee lounge and shower. They perused the aisles for bath towels and other decorative trinkets, and even traced down some vintage high school lockers where the team could stow their valuables. Tuesday always happens to be the day that Bar Marco hosts a weekly financial meeting. During these gatherings, employees, each of whom has access to all of the restaurant's earning figures, can offer suggestions about how to improve day-to-day operations, a safer kind of candle votive, for instance, or ways to cut down on food waste and laundry cost. Now, this should tell you something right off the bat about what sort of place this is. Because, at the beginning I mentioned, like, they're not competing with Olive Garden. They're not competing against Ruby Tuesdays, TGI Fridays. They're not competing against these casual dining places. And I would dare say they're not necessarily competing against most, like, Thai-required sort of restaurants. This is a type of restaurant where, or just a type of business in general, where the owner values the employees. The owner is making the employees co-owners of the business. And I'll explain a little bit more in depth, but just by knowing that they have access to all of the figures, they know how much the restaurant makes, therefore they have more of a stake, because it's not just, you're not just hiring somebody off the street, come in, do labor, I'll give you money. This is, you come in, you do labor, and yes, you'll make money, but you also have a vested interest in how the business does. The 17-year-old girl taking my order at Ruby Tuesdays has absolutely zero vested interest in the overall operation of Ruby Tuesdays. When I worked for an airline, I had no vested interest in how that airline functioned. If they went out of business, and they kind of did with this weird reorganization thing that happened, and they started screwing all of the employees over, and then I left, but I had no vested interest in how the company operated. If they would have given me, stock options, maybe I would have cared a little bit more. I absolutely take pride in my work. I take pride in all the work that I do. When I was washing cars, I took pride in that. When I was, throwing bags onto and off of airplanes, I took pride in that. And don't get worried when I say throw bags. Like, that's what you call it. Like, the guys that unload trucks at UPS, they call it throwing trucks. Now, they're not actually, like, picking up and throwing the truck. And, yes, occasionally you will throw an actual bag, but it's just called throwing bags. So, like, I will give a tip. Don't travel with things that are fragile. Because that's basically, when a baggage handler sees that fragile sticker, it's basically a big giant label to say, see how high you can toss me. So do not travel with fragile things. But let me get back to the article here, where it talks about the employees essentially having a vested interest. They are part of the team. They know how much money the restaurant makes. They get to offer suggestions about how to improve day-to-day operations. They get to basically have a say in how the business runs. After the meeting, staffers hand in a weekly homework assignment, a 3-paragraph report about any nonfiction book of their choosing. Bobby Fry says anytime you're serving people, you should have more to talk about than just the weather. And I agree. I hate small talk. Small talk to me is absolutely petty. And I want to get into a little bit more about Bar Marco's approach and how they were able to triple their profits in just a moment.
During the 2013 Porcupine Freedom Festival, Davi Barker presented an idea for a renegade psychological experiment. Since then, he has refined his idea and put his plan and research into writing. He explains, "We aim to show the world beyond a shadow of a doubt that power corrupts absolutely and corrupt authority deserves no obedience." Authoritarian Sociopathy is available from Amazon.com, all major bookstores, and now available as an audiobook.
It is the year 91,001 BCE. Witness humanity's origins in Hyperchronius, a classic role-playing game for Windows PCs with a story like no other game before. The liberty-oriented experience that is not to be missed. Go to ZOG.Ninja to get your copy of Hypercronius today. Use the code FPP to get $1 off. Hypercronius. ZOG.Ninja. Code FPP.
You can support FPP Radio by shopping online. Whether you're looking for precious metals, bitcoins, or books, you'll find that and more at shop.fppradio.com. Every purchase you make from one of my affiliates, like Namecheap, Spendabit, and Amazon at shop.fppradio.com helps fund FPP Radio. Or you can shop directly from FPP with Bitcoin in the Bitcoin store. That's shop.fppradio.com.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry. Online at fppradio.com.
Bar Marco is definitely not your typical restaurant. The article here from Fortune continues. It's only the beginning of Bar Marco's progressive approach, that being the weekly budget meeting where all of the employees at Bar Marco get to have an input. They get to have a say on ways to improve the earnings of the restaurant, improve the day-to-day operations, and then everybody that works there hands in a 3-paragraph report about any nonfiction book of their choosing, and they do this every week. Bobby Fry, the founder and presumably co-owner of the restaurant, says, quote, "Anytime you're serving people, you should have more to talk about than the weather. If it doesn't sound like your typical bistro, it's only the beginning for Bar Marco's progressive approach." Earlier this year, the restaurant garnered national headlines when it announced that it would completely eradicate tipping as of April 1st. Instead, every employee now receives a base salary of at least $35,000 plus bonuses based on profits. They also get health care from the date of hire, 500 shares in the business, and paid vacation. How can they pull this off? The answer lies in a retooled menu comprising cheaper local ingredients and portions slashed into shareable platters. Here's the funny thing, says Fry. Great ingredients are the only thing in the world where the higher the quality, the less the price. Bar Marco serves inventive fare, and this, by the way, is how you can tell, in addition to the people are making $35,000 a year, and they have a vested interest in how the company operates by getting a say in ways to improve day-to-day operations. Here's how you can tell it's an upscale establishment. On the menu at Bar Marco, $17 dandelion risotto, $14 espresso burger, and $16 chimichurri meatballs. Now, I have absolutely no clue what chimichurri is. I know what a meatball is. No clue what chimichurri is. I am aware of dandelions, and I've heard of risotto, but I don't know if I would want to mix dandelions into risotto, and I cannot imagine a hamburger that has coffee in it. So, based on this, I don't think I would eat there. One thing is the price. Two, none of these things sound like things that I would eat. While the menu prices did drop slightly to account for the new portion sizes, and yes, these prices, the $17 dandelion risotto, the $14 espresso burger, and the $16 chimichurri meatball, those prices are lower than what they were because they did drop the prices slightly to account for the new portion sizes, and these new sums also increased to factor in employee pay. Unconventional though the model may be, Fry, who founded Bar Marco in 2011 alongside high school friend Kevin Cox, Michael Creha, and Justin Steele, say it has succeeded far beyond any of their wildest dreams. And now here's where the actual dollars and cents comes in. This is where it shows that they actually did wind up increasing their profits and how they did so. After 1 month, revenues exceeded expectations by 26%, and overhead cost dropped from 40% to 32%. Fry says our water bill was cut in half, our linen bill was cut in half, our liquor inventory was lean. He says it's all thanks to employee cognizance. Weekly profits of about $3,000 after $26,000 in sales have now climbed to $9,000 profit after roughly $33,000 in sales. So they wound up increasing their sales by about $7,000, and that increased profits by $6,000. And a portion of these profits went right back into employees' paychecks. Having already handed out bonuses, annual salaries at Bar Marco are expected to reach between $48,000 and $51,000 this year. That is in addition to the health insurance, the 500 shares of the company, thus making them all co-owners of Bar Marco, and they also wind up getting paid vacation. The concept, reports Fortune, has been so successful that Fry and team are bringing it to Bar Marco's sister restaurant, the Livermore. Founded in 2013 as a bar, the Livermore has undergone extensive renovations to accommodate food preparation. Fry says it is slated to reopen in Pittsburgh this week, and this, of course, being back in June. And the Livermore is going to have a staff of 10 people. Bar Marco has a staff of 26. Fry, a serial entrepreneur, says he has no plans to open any additional restaurants, and he hopes to venture into other industries down the line. His dream to open a different kind of eatery arose from misgivings about tipping traditions, which are said to have been brought over from Europe after the Civil War. And it's interesting because now Europe is one of the places where tipping is not common. And if you tip a waiter, from what I've heard, I've never been to Europe, but if you tip a waiter, they look at you befuddled and confused about, why are you handing me money? Fry says, whether it's a good service or a bad service, people tend to tip the same amount, and I disagree with that. I tip better when it's good service. I tend to leave a worse tip when it's bad service. But, this guy was running a restaurant, and it could just be that because of the type of establishment he was running, that people were tipping the same whether the service was good or bad. But if you go to, let's use Ruby Tuesdays, Olive Garden, and TGI Fridays as examples. If you go there, yes, some of the people that go there aren't going to tip at all. But, factor them out of it. Most people that are going to a casual dining place, they will tip appropriately whether the service is good or bad. Although some people will give the waiter or the waitress a bad tip if they weren't happy with the way the food came out. So if the food came out and it was not prepared the way they ordered, that's on the chef, but they'll take it out on the waitstaff. Fry says, citing a Cornell professor and gratuity theorist, Michael Lynn, that there's really no difference. He says, when you have bad service, you just don't go back, so in reality, tipping hides how people actually feel. Bar Marco was also born of Fry's vision of a business model that maximized human value. He believes that restaurant owners who pay a low minimum wage are either lazy or strategically inept, saying, you cannot tell me that your business model relies on paying people below the poverty line. You've got to have more pride in your business than that. And there's a little bit more on this that I want to get into. And then I want to talk to you about Afghanistan for just a moment on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and Numery supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $3 per month or any amount of Bitcoin per month, thanks to the recurring payment options provided by Coinbase. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com.
Hey, this is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends radio show. I've been working with computer programmer Derek Slopey to create Fiend Phone. I'm using Fiend Phone right now to talk with and record one of my co-hosts in real time. Take it, Davi.
Hey, this is Davi Barker, and I'm 1,000 miles away from Michael, but we sound like we're in the same room.
We sure do, Davi. So, Davi, please tell the nice people more about Fiend Phone.
Fiend Phone is free, open-source software that opens up a global world of possibilities for collaborative, high-quality remote voice media production, and I'm digging it.
People can try the Windows beta version of Fiend Phone right now at fiendphone.com. But we're also raising money to vastly improve Fiend Phone and vastly improve independent talk media worldwide.
So go to fiendphone.com to help out. Who will build the audio roads? We will, with your help.
That's fiendphone.com. FEENPHONE.com. Foxtrot, Echo, November, phone.com.
Fiend Phone. I never knew remote audio could be this good.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
Before I continue and finish with the article from Fortune.com about the restaurant in Pittsburgh that tripled profits after eliminating tipping, I want to make sure that I tell you about a place that you can keep your money in the free market. That is, if you advocate for free market money, and if you promote and use Bitcoin as an alternative to the fiat-centric world, you need Spend-A-Bit in your arsenal. Spend-A-Bit is the search engine for things you can buy with Bitcoin. Spend-A-Bit aggregates millions of products from thousands of Bitcoin-enabled merchants. Keep your money in the free economy. Spend-A-Bit. Use my affiliate link, spendabit.fppradio.com. And if you're a Bitcoin-accepting merchant, ask about their merchant suite to receive or to reach even more customers. Spendabit.fppradio.com. That's spendabit.fppradio.com. So before I continue with the article, I want to sort of hammer on this statement by Fry because I think it definitely speaks to the type of establishment that he's running and the type of business owner he is. He says that he wanted a business model that maximized human value, and he believes that restaurant owners who pay a low minimum wage are either lazy or strategically inept, saying, quote, "You cannot tell me that your business model relies on paying people below the poverty line." He says, "You've got to have more pride in your business than that." Fry adds, "Google is the best company in the world for how much money they make per employee, and that's because they put all their time and energy into their employees. It pays off for them in fistfuls." In addition to an engaged and energized workforce, Bar Marco is also encouraging entrepreneurship. 3 employees recently left the bar to start their own restaurants. Fry notes the culture of the place is we're never going to stop improving. The second you want to stop getting better at what you do is the second it's time to try something else. And again, this just goes to show the type of place that this is, where they're able to pay employees $35,000 a year plus benefits. And if you expect, TGI Fridays or Olive Garden or Ruby Tuesday to pay their employees $35,000 per year, expect the prices to go up drastically because that's not their business model. Their business model is offer cheap food fairly quickly, get people in, get people out. Bar Marco is more discriminating. They want big money customers coming in. That's why they have a $17 dandelion risotto, a $14 espresso burger, and a $16 chimichurri meatball. And they've probably got some bottles of wine that would cost you $100 or so. I'm just guessing. So completely different business model. But I do agree that the second you stop trying to improve is the second that you need to try something else. Speaking of trying something else, let me jump over to the story about Afghanistan, because the U.S. military definitely needs to try something else. What they need to do is they need to try to not bomb civilians, and they need to try to not bomb hospitals. And if you have been paying attention to the news or listening to this show, you know that the U.S. military a couple of weeks ago bombed a hospital run by Doctors Without Borders in Kunduz, Afghanistan. Well, over the weekend, the Pentagon announced that they would be making condolence payments, i.e. hush money. They're giving hush money to the families of the 22 people that they killed when they bombed a hospital. The story comes from antiwar.com, and it says the statement by the Pentagon insisted that they would pay money to the families and also work to make appropriate payments towards the repair of the hospital they attacked, though the facility is closed at the moment after Doctors Without Borders was unable to get a guarantee that the site would not get attacked again. Yes, you heard that right. The Doctors Without Borders, the nonprofit institution that operates hospitals all around the world, a lot of them in war zones because people in war zones need doctors too. Doctors Without Borders notified the U.S. government and the Afghan government during the attack, hey, we're being attacked. Attacks continued for about an hour. They then sought assurance that this isn't going to happen again. U.S. government, Afghan government, neither one gave assurance that we're not going to bomb you again. So they said, okay, bye. We can't operate in these conditions of being attacked when the laws of war that you guys are actually party to, the laws of war say that hospitals are to be protected. Well, the Afghan government and the U.S. government, they're completely ignoring that. And I'm convinced that the Pentagon is giving this hush money, a condolence payment. That's the official term, condolence payments, and the U.S. government does it all the time. And it generally works very well as hush money. And I'm convinced that the U.S. government believes that by giving hush money to the families of the people slain and by rebuilding the hospital that they destroyed, that will stop Doctors Without Borders from continuing to press for an independent investigation into what happened when their hospital was attacked. Now, let me give a little bit of backstory, and I know I covered this in depth last week. I'll post the link to that show in the show notes. You can go back, listen to the show at your leisure if you wish to do so. But what happened was early in the morning on October, I believe it was October 3rd, October 3rd, the U.S. military started dropping bombs. At first, the Doctors Without Borders staff that was awake and those that were awakened thought, well, this is just an accident. After the next round of bombs dropped, they then notified the U.S. Embassy and the Afghan military, hey, we're under attack, and those are your planes. Can you knock it off? And the attacks continued for about an hour. 22 people in total are confirmed killed. Last report I saw, 30 people are still missing. And, well, it's a war crime because the laws of war, the international humanitarian law says that hospitals are to be protected. Even if the hospital is, let's just imagine for a moment that there was somebody from Al-Qaeda or the Taliban in the hospital. Hospital staff would still have to be notified by any military, hey, we're about to bomb your facility because there are enemies there. That did not happen. That there was no warning by the U.S. military or the Afghan military that we're about to bomb your hospital. It was just, Here's some bombs. Doctors Without Borders says there was nobody in our hospital that was fighting. But the U.S. military and Afghan military, they're not happy that Doctors Without Borders will treat, quote-unquote, the enemy. Hey, don't forget, every Wednesday is the Ask Me Anything. Send those questions, AMA at FPVradio.com.